Welcome everyone to SurrealDB stream number 33. I'm joined today by with Ashpreet, CEO of Agno, and with Martin here at SurrealDB. We're going to be talking about agents, AI, and how Agno and SurrealDB can work together. So, Ashpreet, welcome. Great to have you here today. Before we get started, a shout out to anyone who's joining us today, whether you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or X. Send us a message. I'm not sure if they all come through, but definitely on YouTube and X, they come through to our stream here. So let us know where you're listening in from. If you've got any questions, then put those in the chat and we'll answer those as we can. But anyway, Ashpreet, great to have you with us today. Give us an introduction to Agno and what you're trying to solve.
Thank you, Tobie and Martin, for having me here. It's a pleasure being working with the SurrealDB team. Agno and SurrealDB are a great fit together, and I'm glad to be joining you on the stream today. For people joining us, to give you a little bit of introduction about myself, I'm Ashpreet. I'm the founder and CEO of Agno, which is a high-performance multi-agent framework. So if you're looking to build multi-agent systems, Agno is the default choice for building your system, running it, and managing it. A little bit deeper into Agno, when you are building these agentic systems, when you want to work with language models that can take actions, the three problems you're looking to solve. You want to build a reliable system, you want to deploy it to your cloud of choice privately and own your data, and then you want a user interface to manage that system which you built and run and now serving to your users. Agno solves all of these three problems, giving you the fastest framework for building multi-agent systems, a very powerful runtime for deploying your multi-agent systems privately in your cloud called the Agent OS, and then finally, it gives you a beautiful and intuitive UI for managing that system. That's it from us.
So it really is that kind of full package that's going to enable custom agent building, but having all of that control at the same time.
Absolutely. It's the harness where in between where you can run your language models. And there are two pieces of problems when you're building with LLMs. The system you're building, the harness, which Agno provides, and the context you send to the language model where SurrealDB comes in. So our team has loved working with SurrealDB, and I think it's a great fit for builders looking for reliable AI engineering.
So obviously the agent space is changing rapidly at the moment, right? People are trying out, seeing what works, how do they build things. I guess as you're continuing to build Agno and people are building on Agno, what are some of the biggest challenges you see developers and organizations running into at the moment as they try to build out that AI tech stack?
There are two big challenges. One is reliability, visibility into the system. Have we built the system? How is this performing? How do we really take it to the next level? When can this go live? That's one part of the equation. And the other part of the equation is how do we make sure our system is getting the right context? When you're working with language models, everything is the context, because that's predominantly what we control. We control the input, and how that output comes out, we show it to the user. So those are the two big challenges which people face right now. Building the agent, how do we reliably get this thing to execute 9 out of 10 times in the manner which we're expecting? And then how do we consistently provide the most relevant, up-to-date context with the language model so users get the best experience?
Yeah, it's interesting. Before we jump into a few other questions, so big shout out to Wizzy MK from sunny Johannesburg. Great to have you with us today. And we've got a few people here as well sharing that they're either users or big believers in Agno and SurrealDB. So Wizzy as well, Agno, Agent OS, rapid and custom agent building, which is great. And some emojis with that as well. So Vikram, the database is great as a product, both as NoSQL and SQL flavor. ORM and Rust is badly needed. So okay, fine. So we'll definitely look to add some ORM functionality into the query language or the query layer before you get connect with SurrealDB. I think so. You talk about reliability and reliability of as we build with LLMs and with our agents, let's say, what is the reliability of those responses? And I think that comes back to what are we adding into that tech stack to bring us and give us that reliability? Where is that bottleneck right now? Why? And also, can you unpack that a bit about how people can solve that challenge?
I think there are two parts to this. One is the quality of the models. I know there's a lot of opinions in the market on this, but my personal experience working with these systems for the last 3 years is while the quality is really improving, you want to have the perfect context you send to your model. A, you want to use the best model right now because they're the only ones doing the job. B, you want to make sure that the context, you don't send it extra context. So if you have 1 million tokens to send on every request, don't send 1 million tokens. Send exactly what you need. And that is how developers are really approaching this problem. And along with that, I also think that users are kind of trying to find the best use cases. About a year ago, people thought that these things would solve every problem in the world. But now users are a lot more advanced. They understand that you want to solve smaller problems, but you want to solve them reliability. You want to give that consistent experience. And consistency comes from giving the LLM the perfect context on every request, whether it be memory, whether it be knowledge, whether it be the right prompt to get the information back from it. And obviously, measuring that is a part of the equation. But the first part is the context is everything.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because absolutely context is everything. But I think developers want to give as much context as possible, right? And it's like, we talk about large context windows. We talk about, sharing all of your chat history. And I think, there are many issues, right? We could spend hours, days discussing this. But I think the issue is, as you say, you want to keep that concise because that gives you better accuracy. But with that comes the difficulty of how do I share history or knowledge or memory in the right way? And then in addition to that, how do I get reproducible results? If you're sharing just the things that are most relevant to that conversation, how do I ensure that that reproducibility is there?
Yeah, I think so. When you're looking for reproducibility, you want to have a way to actually measure that across a varied sample set. So let's go through the Agentic AI journey, and I think there's also, like, if you wouldn't mind me interjecting a quick point, SurrealDB integration with Agno initially as well. It was proposed by users using both products, which thought that, listen, we need to kind of use these together. And I think that's one of the best ways two products come together, and that's how we found that as well. One of the things we really liked about SurrealDB at the time was, it can be used for memory, it can be used for knowledge, it can be used for graph-based processing, it could be used for, hopefully in the future, like multimodal processing as well. So I'm going to come back to your reliability question, but I just want to touch on the fact that, just the fact that users were using both of these together and brought the two products to work really well together is an absolute pleasure. Now, when we look into reliability, I think it's all about measuring every interaction. It's all about owning keeping the use case small most of the times, and knowing exactly the diverse set of inputs that are going to go onto the agent, and then measuring those pretty much across the stack. I think that is the way to get reliability from the system.
Yeah, it's interesting. So first of all, thank you for bringing in the concept of SurrealDB into this conversation. Before we carry on, we've just built that integration recently. Had that merged into the Agno OS stack. Martin, can you talk a little bit more about what's just been built, what's just been merged in, and what that makes possible?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's was first of all very, very fun experience. I think as we'll know, the match between both products it's amazing because you only need there's two building pieces, put them together, and then you can start doing agents. And basically, we have integrated a couple of months ago already the vector store. That's for the knowledge part. But now we finalized the integration with the memory. So now agents can use SurrealDB for the memory. So in the memory, we're storing also sessions, knowledge, evals, and metrics, which is very, very nice because whatever you run with the agent, and the agent stores a lot of those things and statistics and results and evals in the database. So you can go into the database and take a look what happened, how many tokens, how much time it took, and that's what I think is important with Agno. So now, yeah, Agno now has SurrealDB as one of the memory providers, and yeah, that's just being merged.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's also one of the demos I do a lot of times. It's very easy to run locally, and it works pretty fast as well. So I've enjoyed working with it.
That's cool. And I think you mentioned earlier, it's when you have users who are using these in the same way. I think that comes on to what we're trying to solve, and I think we're trying to solve the same thing, right? You're trying to do the agent workflow, as it were, in a much simpler way, right? Trying to make it have better results, better accuracy, and also at the same time enable better functionality in that agent workflow. And then on our side, we're trying to simplify how that data is stored and then extracted, and therefore bringing that reasoning. So that brings me, actually, before I've got a comment actually from LinkedIn. We've got these are not so much questions, still fan shout outs at the moment, but LinkedIn user saying, I love working with Agno. Being able to go from idea to live at lightning speed is amazing. So massive shout out to Agno as a platform there. Question about Agno workflows and when that's coming. So Richardson on LinkedIn saying, when waiting for Agno workflows. In terms of you mentioned context. Martin's mentioned memory. We hear people talk about it as contextualization or memory or reasoning or knowledge. There are lots of different ways, right? And I think the industry is, I don't think it's even converging yet, but it's trying to understand where the direction of this is going. But how do you at Agno think about managing the storage of that context, both in terms of short term and long term, and how that relates to bringing that accuracy to the developer, and also then how does that persistence come into play when building on Agno?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because that is pretty much all what agent engineering is at this time, which is we have this harness in which the language model runs. It has access to this information. And then this is the context we provide with every input to generate the output. At Agno, we tend to stay away from buzzwords, and we just think of context as the input that's going into this program that is accessible via API. Now, breaking that down, you have multiple, when you break that down, context is the prompt that is firstly going in, which is a description of the task. Let's say you're building a workflow to answer a user ticket or a user question. So the first thing that's going to go as part of the context is, hey, this is a description of the task you need to do. You're interacting with the user, answer this question. Then what you want to give to the language model is the ability to pull context as needed and provide some supplementary information on how to do that. Now, that can be distributed into memory, which is this user lives in New York. They like having ice cream. So if there's a question about ice cream, look at this place. They like to take a walk in Central Park and stuff like that. And then the knowledge bases, that's where SurrealDB really comes in. Having access to that data where the language model can search for context rather than being force-fed something it doesn't need. That's how we really look at context right now. So the input plus the ability for the language model to pull what it needs. When we look at it in human terms, let's say you're giving a test and you have an open book test. If I was to ask you a physics question and then you give you a physics book right there, hey, search for whatever you need, you'll have a much more successful job at answering that question or solving your task. And that's how we look at context, just the input that's going into these black box systems to generate the output.
I like the way you simplified that, but in a way, that simplification has come from a lot of thinking about this problem, right? Because I think if you look at the way that people are building right now, other systems, other platforms, or just when they're hacking together lots of different pieces, I think right now it's, effectively we're seeing this incredibly complex space, complex in what you can do with it rather than how it is, if that makes sense. But we're still just feeding it text, right? Yeah. And I think the answer a lot of the time is just how much text can we feed it? and how much pattern matching can we do to feed it slightly more accurate text, but still it's just text and a lot of it. And actually, what we're finding at SurrealDB is there's a limit to the accuracy that people get to with just that, right? I love that concept of actually let it choose what it needs to search for, because then it has effectively its own ability to think in a way, right? I know that's not technically what it's doing, but it is in a way, right? It's got its own autonomy to do what it wants or what it thinks it needs to get. At SurrealDB, we see that in a slightly different way, because obviously we're dealing with data rather than agents per se, and we see that as there are facts, there are vectors, there's relationships, there's understanding, there's links between different concepts of understanding. And as you say, there are many different buzzwords being used at the moment: knowledge, context, reasoning, memory, brain. It's just effectively putting the right data into the system. And as we know, LLMs are effectively just patterns or detecting patterns and reasoning about the next pattern that it should output. What do you right now? I when you work with developers and organizations who are building on Agno, how much of kind of different models of data, multimodal data in our sense, but how much does that come into play right now?
Quite a bit, actually. You'd be surprised. Companies are working with all sorts of data right now, and that's why, our preference is always to reach for a database that can support that right now, or at least grow with the user, because you don't want to be moving your data into another system later on. When we work with customers that want to get started, my recommendation is always start with the simpler use cases. And they're like, oh, the simplest one is just document extraction or invoice processing or something that is a workflow that can just be a button shown to their user, and the user clicks the button and it does exactly what that button describes. That's sort of first level of reliability one. Now, when you think about that, if you're doing document extraction, that is text and PDF of sorts, because there's a PDF or an image that's being fed along with it. So you immediately get multimodal data in there. Then along with that, another part that's really coming into the mix now is almost all of these applications have some sort of audio attached to it, some sort of frames. I'm gonna use the word very carefully, because video is not the accurate description. It's like a set of frames that are going to the language model. So again, you have more multimodality over there. So multimodal data is everywhere, and I think it's developers going for these tools should choose a database that can grow with them, should choose a system that can work with them on multimodality.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I love what you said there about video as well. A lot of people see videos as this other way of storing data, but really it's just a set of images, lots of images, but it's just it's a different way of getting more data in at the same time. Richardson on LinkedIn, he agrees Agent OS is something game changing. Probably my next project can definitely showcase its maximum capacity, and literally built Windows agent using Agno. I'm not sure what Windows agent here is specifically, but a Windows agent maybe. And then human and loop along with user memories worked for me. So I think this is one of the questions, and I'll come back to kind of an extension of what you just said there about multimodal data in a minute. But one of the things that we see a lot is that obviously everyone's jumping into AI right now. They're trying out the different frameworks, and I think they get to a certain point where it succeeds to an extent, and then they hit those barriers and those challenges. And I think one of the biggest things that we see because right now you can describe an agent as anything based around AI, right? Because people are using the word agent for very different things. And you've got agents that respond back to your question, right? A chat agent. And then you've got agents that literally have full autonomy and can do what they need. And I think that's where we're going with the real term agent, right? But as you get to that point, accuracy, and not just having a reasonable level of understanding that something may be accurate in its response, but actually being able to guarantee a certain level of accuracy back. How do we go about solving that? And are we anywhere near to solving that just yet?
I personally don't think we're anywhere near to solving that. I get people say, "Oh, you're building these systems; these are technologies that you're putting out," and I'm very clear that multi-agent systems, you don't really want them to run wild. Like, you don't want to just think about things as, okay, this is my data analyst agent, this is my web search agent, this is my knowledge agent. I'm just going to put them together. It's going to magically work. I think it's good to experiment with them. I think it's good to kind of see the capabilities, but for this to happen, well, we need to improve the harness in which they're operating. This is the direction where we are investing a lot of time in. B, we need the models to actually get better and understand the full context of things they're getting. But when you look at these problems, there are two approaches here. One is the capabilities of these systems meet your expectations, or the expectations of these systems, you can actually bring them down a little to get that reliability in there. So that's where I work with customers right now, where I tell them that the visionary products which you're thinking, they're going to be possible reliably. You can obviously build a very good demo right now, but reliably for users, they're going to be possible end of next year, 2027, probably. But what you can get out to your users right now is just magic sprinkled across your product that does one task really, really well. That could mean surfacing information about their account. That could mean helping them with form filling, helping them with extraction. So just one small pieces of AI magic sprinkled across your product becomes a AI native product that brings a magical experience out. So that's where I guide them right now, that the products you want to put out right now, you want to put out smaller use cases, well-defined use cases that work very well for the user. And then you want to have the harness in place that when the models reach that capability, you can put out these larger, complex, visionary products as well.
It comes in line with what you were saying earlier, which is I think right now it's small building blocks, right?
Yeah.
And those small building blocks go along with small context windows, small amounts of data, relevant, accurate, and that gives you the best, not necessarily accuracy, but it gives you the best chance of accuracy, right? Yeah. And you've got in terms of the platform, what you're building, you've got less to reason about. So therefore, you can iterate quickly and make those work well. I think at SurrealDB, look, we love using Agno. We're going to talk a little bit in a bit about what this new integration brings for developers. So we'll get Martin talking about that in a little bit. But we see the ability to store facts in terms of vectors, and then you could better filter on those facts, but you're still just searching through facts and matching text, or matching the semantic understanding, the similarity of that text, the meaning of that text. Or you can then go to relations and linked knowledge or memories, as it were. And that combination of different types of data, from graph to document to time series data, and we've got some users storing many different types of data, whether it is time series or vector or graph or just normal document data. Where do you see a database like SurrealDB making the biggest difference?
So the way we see this working is the second part of your problem is getting the right context to surface for that agent. That's where we see SurrealDB making a bigger difference for our users. It can be that central place where they store all the context that these agents can access as more complex pieces of technology that they're building. This could mean, let's say, you starting with an internal knowledge chatbot, you have that stored there. But more importantly, you can also extend that to external systems that are accessible to your customers that want to interact with your product. So SurrealDB can be the source of truth for the information that is being served to these models. And the harness, or the framework where Agno comes and stores, search for this information from SurrealDB. And SurrealDB surfaces that in the right context at the right time, which generates the right output for the user as well. So again, I think like people put a lot less focus right now on the data, how they're storing it, how they're kind of like presenting it to the model. That's the first part you tune, because as you said, facts with vectors, that's you're consistently improving the quality of your search. And I think that's where like the magic right now is.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Before I ask Martin to a question, we've got Vishrajit here. He says, "Hi, Ashpreet, sir." So just a shout out to you.
Thank you. Hi, Vishrajit.
So Martin, look, I know you're a big fan of Agno, having built a number of kind of demos and systems on top of it already, and then having worked on this integration. Tell me, what are the things that excites you most about Agno specifically, and then about the possibilities that Agno and SurrealDB can bring out for developers, but also agents generally?
Oh, yeah. But I think I can start speaking by my first experience with Agno. It was a couple of weeks, probably months ago. We released our Surreal MCP. And so I was trying which framework was easier to get it up, set and running. And Agno was just super easy, no brainer. And it was just not a simple demo. It was just a full agent researcher doing the research and then using our Surreal MCP to store the results. So it was really impressive. Once I used the proper LLM model, because with local Olama was just struggling a lot. But that's also good, because then with the Agno agents, you have the metrics and things, so you can actually debug a lot into it. And also in the CLI tool has very nice outputs and logs, errors, warnings, best experience out there, I think. But that was using the MCP as a tool, right? I think that's also a nice thing about the agent. So basically, you can also, if you have your vector store, for example, you use that as knowledge for an agent. Probably it's going to do the similarity search, retrieve a good context, and generate an answer. But what we've seen with like real case use cases, sometimes just similarity search is just not enough to get like the right context, and probably you even need to re-rank that results as well. But sometimes, since we have this multimodality in SurrealDB, we're used actually. For me, it's super common to have vectors together with a graph, and then you get the similarity search. Then you use the graph relations to trim that tree a little bit, and probably remove some nodes that you know based on the relationships that are not relevant for the context you're building. So I think with Agno, it would be super easy to actually create a custom tool that you can provide to your agent that then does some special magic specific for your use case to retrieve the context that you know that it's the way you need it for your specific use case. For example, if you need to incorporate time awareness, right? If your nodes, your chunks are based on different years or months, then you can build a graph that connects months with the chunks, and then basically trim out the months you don't care about, and then just get the chunks that are related to a specific time or month or whatever concept is, right? And then you basically provide the agent with a very powerful custom to your use case tool instead of just simple vector similarity search. So I think that capability that you can add multiple tools to one agent, and then even have different agents that work as a team, each with its own tools. And that's pretty awesome. I think it opens the possibilities to just creativity. Basically, is the limit.
So we talked about the technical benefits that brings, right? How is that going to result in benefits directly into the organizations that are using this? And that's to Ashpreet or Martin.
I mean, it's in this case, it's just accuracy, right? And hopefully getting more deterministic outcomes as well. So if you have like a poor context, probably your LLM will tend to hallucinate more. And also, if you're not re-ranking pretty well, and then it's just have a context that's not right enough. So accuracy is not going to be very good. Also, it's not going to to be very deterministic, things that you want to avoid sometimes. So I think if you use these nice plugins or tools that you can build to have a just richer context and very custom context to your use case, then it's going to show just better accuracy along the line.
Yeah.
Not sure if you agree with Ashpreet, or you have some extra.
I love that use case of connecting chunks to the time and then trimming the ones you don't need. Like I think like when companies right now, there's a mandate for almost every product, well, at least in the sample we work with, they need to have an AI component to their ecosystem, to their product line. And once you have that AI component, you want to have the best AI agent that is being exposed to user. The way you get to that accuracy and reliability is the right context. You need to build these custom tools. You need to build these custom retrievers. You need to kind of have that high level of quality in your product. I think almost every builder, you ask them, they'll tell you they want a high quality product. And I think that's where it directly impacts the organizations, being able to do these things with the right context, building the best AI products out there. I think that has extreme value to companies right now. We are just exiting the phase where people are more interested in, hey, let's see what these things can do. Now these things are in many places, they're actually live. Many products that we use have some sort of like, you see that magic button in there. There's some sort of like AI is being sprinkled everywhere, right? And we're entering the phase where the quality of that little widget is going to become more important. And I think that's the biggest impact to these companies. How do you build the highest quality AI product?
So it's interesting. And we've talked about accuracy and what's possible right now and where those limitations are right now, or not necessarily limitations, but the limitations with what people are building and how people are building it. I guess, you've probably seen this as well, Ashpreet, which is the organizations that we're talking to want to build bigger agents that don't just do a button that does a small thing or helps with a small task. They want to build workflows, I guess, is one way of looking at it, but actually agents that have access to vast amounts of company-wide data and can make decisions and choices across all of that knowledge. And I guess my question is, looking forward to the future, what needs to change, if there is anything, or is it about actually engineering things in a different way? But what needs to change in order to get to that point where organizations can really start to have the confidence to build large-scale agents that have access? Obviously, you can't pipe everything in, but the ability to reason over the data that they need in order to solve large problems. Is that a workflow issue? Is that an LLM and a data issue? How do we go to that next step?
I think it's just ecosystem maturity right now. The companies are investing a lot right now, but I think it's important to continue to build with these systems to learn what the limits are, what the capabilities are, and how to set your expectations. So let's say you want to build bigger agents with access to a corpus of company-wide knowledge that can do text to SQL as well, so they can pull data from databases. I think what is required right now is ecosystem maturity, knowledge, and investment. Okay, this is how you're going to build this agent to get that right quality, that customization. And I think that's a little bit on the market as well right now. The market pitches these systems as, hey, enter a prompt, I'm going to build you this agent, and I'm going to solve every single problem in your company within 5 minutes. I think that is, once companies move beyond that and then they realize, okay, this is actually a software engineering problem, this is a systems engineering problem, we need to build the right system to get these things in place, to measure them, and to invest time in improving them. That's I think we have the technology to do these things. Now the part is just let's get real about the problem and just start to build it, and not have this expectation that I'm just going to put 20 things together and they're just going to magically solve every problem in the company. That's just that's a hard expectation to meet right now.
Before I jump onto some other kind of future-looking questions that I've got, going back to the integration with SurrealDB and Agno, what is the best way that someone can get started with that and kind of investigating what's possible with that integration?
Perfect. I think the best way right now is there's a link in there which Ned might drop any minute. Is the it's the Surreal OS. I think it's agno.link/Surreal OS. It's a cookbook that brings up SurrealDB and connects an agent OS to it. So it's you have agent, you have multi-agent teams, and you have agentic workflows that are connected to SurrealDB and can answer questions with that. It's got memory, it's got knowledge, it's got many of the bells and whistles that are needed. So that's a great cookbook to get started. And then you have documentation both on the SurrealDB site and on the Agno site that has information on how to customize your knowledge bases, how to take this starter cookbook which we provided to the next level. That's if I was starting with this, that's how I'd proceed.
Awesome, that's great. There's the knowledge link shared at the bottom of the screen. Can I just confirm? Can you hear me? Because my mic just switched during that.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So you mentioned at the very beginning of the stream, or near to the beginning, you mentioned multimodal data. So people, as is obvious, because this is what we need to have an understanding over. Audio, video, imagery, PDFs, arbitrary text or JSON files. We need to build agents that have an understanding over everything. What are the kind of use cases that you are seeing people build out there predominantly right now in the wild?
So for us right now, we see a lot. So I'm going to talk a little bit in bell curve terms. There's like a big section of use case that are very, I'd say, common, but not the most advanced or complex. That is document processing, invoice extraction, just plain simple SaaS workflows. Because the business world, the actual people doing the work, the software that's doing the work is just plain and boring SaaS work. Vertical industries in procurement, in logistics, in healthcare, that is I'd say about 80 to 85% of use cases that are working well involve some sort of knowledge research. Here's a huge corpus of documentation. Sometimes it's not even text, right? Because it's just a PDF, it's got images, it's got charts. Let's find information and generate reports from it. Then we have this data coming in from users. They're sending us emails of invoices. They're sending us emails of reports. They're sending us emails that are handwritten sometimes. So how do you process that data and do a particular task, either group everything together to one ID, and just things that were manually beforehand, because previously they'd have to hire people to do this manually, and now agents are doing that. So this covers about 80 to 85% of the cases that are working well. Then you come to actual more advanced cases where you have a free-form input like a chatbot, and that is solving problems inside the company for internal users. Hey, I'm going to meet this particular company on a sales call. Can you send me everything? Can you send me everything I need to know? I'm going to this user is having this problem. How can I best respond to them? So that's one of the another case where multimodal data is become very useful. Now, one use case which a company is using with Agno, which I really enjoyed working with them on, is that have this question. We're all used to answering support. That's what I do most of my time as well. But imagine if support was not just text, right? If you could have agents now search through images, charts, generate answers, maybe generate some sort of audio, video with it, explain it via an image. Those types of capabilities are really, really kind of shining in terms of multimodal as well. A place where SurrealDB can come in, let's say you have images in there and the agent knows to answer this particular question, let me put together this type of chart or this presentation, and here is the template I used. These are previous examples that I've used to solve this. Much better responses going out. So that's on the more advanced side as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we, before this stream, we spoke about some of the ways that your users are using Agno and some of the challenges that our users are facing as well. And we've got some exciting things planned that should make some of what we've discussed today that little bit easier. I think one of those is file storage, right? Being able to directly reference your files that you're accessing, contextualize those, understand those, and then bring those into the memory layer as if, without having to think about how do we do this across multiple platforms. That's definitely something else that should help users simplify, I guess, the tech stack, but also help with that accuracy and the infrastructure problem, I guess. What are the before we go on, I've got a message here. So when multiple agents write to the same memory via SurrealMCP, are writes transactional? So to answer that question, definitely writes are transactional. I guess my question back to that, Wizzy, would be, how can you be guaranteed or sure that multiple agents are writing the exact same memory? Because those memories can be stored, represented in very different ways, depending on how the LLM or the agent determined that at the time. But that's a really interesting question. But yeah, everything's transactional in SurrealDB, whether that's from the time series or the graph or the document and the vector side as well. So I think, we've been on here for just over 40 minutes now, and we can go on for hours talking about the current issues that people are facing with agents, the next step, how do we get to that next step? As we know, there's some exciting stuff being worked on Agno's side, on SurrealDB's side as well, and obviously some things that we haven't even been able to touch on today. But I'd love to put this out to the audience as well through some kind of formal questionnaire at some point. But right now, Ashpreet, for you, if we were to come back to a second conversation about Agno, SurrealDB, and agents as a whole, what do you think the most exciting aspect is that we should touch on? And let's think about, how that solves the future problems that we envisage.
Same here. I think I want to touch on something that is a little more futuristic, a little more visionary. Like the way I think about it is, how can we hand off a capability that is currently with the LLM to search for the perfect information it needs to LLM, just basically the agent is describing to SurrealDB via MCP or something that, listen, I'm looking for information about this user, and then it just gets the perfect context. And I don't think we really need to solve it by our next call, but I'd love to kind of because that's top of mind for me. Again, I see the problem in two folds: the framework or the harness of this in which these agents operate, and the second is the context that is they have access to. And if we can work on something like that, I think that is a great win for the ecosystem overall.
That's cool. That's really cool. I've got two very short questions as well. So developers building today, what is the one thing that you'd encourage them to start with, just to get going? Those people who maybe are still dabbling with chat, but they haven't really dabbled with agents. Where do they start? How do they do it quickly?
So I'd say start with the Agno documentation. Find the SurrealDB link and just started building your agent OS. Things are a lot easier now. Start with a personal use case that is valuable to you. Don't think too far advanced. Don't overthink it. Just build something because you want to get a feel of this new technology. I think that is a place I tell people to start. Anything that you're doing day to day, I want to just send it notes via WhatsApp, and I want you to organize it and give me a summary at the end of the day. Or I want to send it something by voice and start to build some of these use cases yourself. And that's the best way to get started.
So keep it small, hack anything, and just start small and go from there.
Absolutely.
Find yourself a problem that's familiar to you, so that you know what you expect to what high accuracy means. And basically, I've downloaded WhatsApp backups, for example, and build agents on top of that. And then you start experimenting a lot, and then you start hitting challenge after challenge, and that's the way you learn.
I like that. I think that's how some of the biggest companies are built, right? They're always solving a problem that is relevant to them, and then they build from there. So, Ashpreet, my very final question, I promise this is my final one now. On these streams, on my Discord AMAs, our community, our users love to hear a little bit about kind of what we're building on, even if that's not fully detailed. Is there anything that you can share that's really exciting that You don't have to give the full details away, but the community would be really excited to hear about.
I think so. One thing which I'm very excited about is we recently released this thing called the Agent OS, which is a runtime in very simple ways. It's an orchestrator for your agents. But the fun part about that is the Agent OS can expose your agents as MCP. So it's the entire Agent OS is an MCP in itself. It can expose it as A2A protocol, AGUI, Versailles SDK. So basically, it can make itself available in a network. Now, one world, and this is kind of in practice with a few larger customers, is what happens when you have 5, 10, 20, 100 agent OSs that are just kind of like making themselves available as part of a network. And how does that system look like internally in the company? What is capable with that? And how you have a parallel part of the human organization as the agentic organization. I think those are like kind of like some of the things that kind of excite me right now. And I apologize if that was a little bit fuzzy, but I've been really enjoying thinking and working with that concept of what happens when you have 100 agent OSs in a company, each team just building their own products, and then they're like kind of talking to each other.
No, it's interesting, and I think in this space and the time we're in right now, right? It's about trying lots of different things, and so fuzzy is not a bad thing. It's a way of iterating, I guess. And Richardson on LinkedIn agrees. He says, yeah, I can. So he agrees with the issue that you're, that challenge that we're seeing. Look, I want to say, Ashpreet, this has been amazing. What a great conversation. 47 minutes now has gone by, and we could go on for hours talking about agents and Agno and SurrealDB and how to bring those three things together. I think I'd love to have another stream in the future where we talk more generally and look at some of the actually dive deep into some of the technical issues and see maybe even build an agent live and show people just how easy it is to get going with some of the concepts that we've been talking about today. But Ashpreet, this has been great. Thank you for your time. Martin, thank you as well. Shout out to the community as well for the questions. In fact, I've got a question here. Let me just see if it's a question or is it So Wizzy says, would like to deploy an AI assistant that remembers conversations, preferences, and past tasks across months and surfaces them contextually. Agent OS and SurrealDB sounds like the perfect stack. So Wizzy, that's not a question, but I think you're definitely made a correct statement there. I like it. And of course, if you've built something cool, then definitely share it to Agno or SurrealDB's Twitter feeds. Or jump on our Discord as well. We'd love to see what you're building with Agno and SurrealDB, and we look forward to sharing more in the future in terms of integrations. So Ashpreet, thank you. It's been great, and looking forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks for having me here.
See you.
Bye.